Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here on 9 News Watch for another look at those winds, and they have been crazy all day long. It's going to continue for a little while longer. We don't have much more to go, so stay with us. We will get through this, but we've still got some of those winds gusting for the next hour or two before things will start to improve. Let's start things out by taking a look at what we've got in terms of those overview conditions. The worst will be between about now and 5 o'clock, maybe in southeastern Colorado. The worst of the winds just about over and done with in the next hour or so. That would be Springfield, Lamar, which had an 107-mile-an-hour wind gust earlier on today. Those winds should start to taper a little bit back for southeast Colorado first and then into the foothills. Denver, perhaps 60 to 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts for us here in the metro area. And those gusts still pretty strong right now at this point. DIA at 44 miles an hour. West side of the city seeing stronger winds. Generally speaking, you get closer to the Denver and Jeffco line. That's where those winds are, close to about 60, 65 miles an hour. Still at this point, Colorado Springs, where those winds have really just been very, very dramatic today. 63 miles an hour right now. The airport did have an 86-mile-an-hour gust, and the Air Force Academy on the north side of town, a 100-mile-an-hour gust earlier on. There's a look at those top gusts that we've seen so far today. Lamar, an 107-mile-an-hour gust. Broomfield at 104. The Springs, Colorado Springs at the Air Force Academy, 100-mile-an-hour gust, and Boulder so far about 91 miles an hour. So some very, very strong winds, and those do continue for us. Again, notice the west side of the metro area getting really blasted with those strongest winds. DIA and the east side of the city, east of I-25, those winds, generally speaking, not all that bad, though, again, nothing to scoff at when we're talking about those 40, 50-mile-an-hour gusts. You're certainly seeing it, you're certainly feeling it. But also, another thing to note is a northeastern quadrant, Fort Morgan, 64-mile-an-hour gust, Sterling, a 52-mile-an-hour gust. That's where we've seen that dust just getting kicked up and blown about and making visibility all but impossible. We've seen some very, very dramatic footage from the eastern plains today. I-76, I-70, east of Denver and northeast of Denver. Really got to avoid that at all possible here today because it's just so nasty out that way. Now, as we get over the next couple of hours, conditions will start to improve. By about 4 or 5 o'clock, those winds start to back off, and they'll really in earnest back off by about 6, 7 o'clock this evening when those gusts in the metro area, generally speaking, get below severe levels. We're talking about 30, 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts as opposed to the 70, 80, even 90 or 100-mile-an-hour gusts that we've been dealing with throughout much of the day. The foothills still holding us in those 50, 60-mile-an-hour gusts over the next little while. And then for tomorrow, it'll still be a bit blustery, but shouldn't be all that bad, and that'll continue into your Friday. A couple things to keep in mind over the next couple of hours with that power outage threat still in place, especially for the west side of the metro area. Charge up those phones, keep those phones charged, and also keep your laptops charged as well. Don't drive a high-profile vehicle, a Sprinter van, a Jeep Wrangler, something like that with a big surface area. We've seen all sorts of reports of overturned semi-trucks today as well. And of course, if possible, just stay inside. You don't want to be outside in this blustery mess, I would imagine. High wind warning continues until 5 o'clock for basically all of eastern Colorado and much of the central part of the state as well. And there's a look at that system that is quickly zipping its way off to the east, leading to tornadoes in Nebraska right now, and eventually tornadoes possible here in the middle of December in Iowa and Minnesota. How about that? That's how dynamic, how strong the storm system is. But it is starting to leave us alone here in Colorado. Denver, we had some of that earlier precipitation. That is long over and done with. Now, today, the high temperature of 46 degrees, you won't even notice it because it's so windy. It's also a cold wind, so it's going to feel much colder than those 45, 50-degree temperatures we've been dealing with for much of the day. Snow showers move back into the picture for Friday morning with a weak system that mostly stays to our north, but we'll get some snow, especially into the Parks, the Elkheads, and the Medicine Bow ranges of far northern Colorado. Then that system is it, at least as we head over the next little while. So long story short, we do have a bit more snow, as I mentioned, on Friday. And then as we get into the next 7 days, we've really got nothing too dramatic in terms of that overall weather picture. So once we get past this current system, we're going to be dealing with generally above average temperatures, a lot of 40s, upper 40s, low to mid 50s, and plenty of sunshine, maybe with, again, that storm system, that weak one that drops on through on your Friday being the lone exception over the course of the next 5 to 6 days. So stay with us for the next, or I should say, stay safe for the next 2 to 3 hours. Things will improve pretty quickly here by the time we get to about 4 or 5 o'clock this evening. But until then, just make sure you stay safe from these strong wind gusts, especially on the west side of the Denver metro area in southeastern Colorado. Thanks again for joining us here on 9 News Watch. I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Chief Meteorologist Kathy Sabin has your forecast at 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10 on the 9 News family of networks. So tune on in for the latest on those winds with Kathy. And again, in the meantime, I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Thanks again for joining us here on 9 News Watch.